Welcome back in, everyone, to another edition of the 70 Chipcast. Welcome all our new viewers. We had a bit of an uptick in our recent mock draft video, so we appreciate everyone checking that out, and welcome anyone that is new to the channel. Please go ahead and hit subscribe if you have not already to Pro Football Enterprises. Set alerts, ring that notification bell. So you get notified anytime that we upload a new episode of the 70 Chipcast or any other draft profile, any other mock draft episode that gets released by Mr. Ben Parker. How are we doing this evening?
I'm doing great, and thank you everybody for hopping in tonight. We have a lot to cover. We'll do it in a fairly short amount of time tonight, but important stuff we've got going on too. One falls more into the rumors and reports category, and then one turns into the looking ahead to draft prospects grouping.
Yeah, so in about, gosh, what is that? So the combine's in, I believe, in a week. It'll be late next week. And then about another week and a half after that, free agency, new year, new league year. It's coming pretty quickly. So as you can imagine, especially once the combine starts hitting, that's when the the non-tampering period really starts taking place with all these agents and front office people. But then that's when rumors are going to start swirling out the you know what. They're already starting to kind of kick off now in terms of these rumors. Ian Rappaport, who, you can decide on what national guys are trustworthy, which ones are full of it, and so forth. He has I would say, pretty decent track record, and I don't think he just says stuff to say stuff. Um, he said that Washington is there's going to be fireworks this offseason, basically, in free agency. He kind of it was in a episode with Mike Garafolo or Garofalo. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but another NFL Network guy. They were talking how, we're top five in cap space, how Jaden's on his rookie contract, how, there's just a lot of opportunity there. And he said, look for fireworks, in free agency from us, which is something that we've been burned by in the past, and especially during the Snyder era, the early Snyder era, where, it was just we're gonna overpay for every single big name, every single, high price free agents. We're gonna make sure they do not go anywhere else, and we're gonna look stupid doing it. That was kind of the motto of the early Snyder era. And since Bruce Allen took over, that kind of had stopped. I mean, there was a couple cases here and there, but nothing major as it was back then. Nothing that broke the bank per se. And we just really haven't spent a lot of money on free agents over the past 5, 6 years. So that would be a definite change in philosophy based on the current regime, but I think it would be a necessary one. Now, how crazy we end up going, I think that's going to be the discussion for tonight, and what fireworks looks like to you. Like what does fireworks, who would they bring in that would like cause fireworks to go off, you know? So, what is your reaction to it's not necessarily reporting, but it's more the rumor mill as you had stated. What's your reaction to that? And then if you wanted to start diving into what does fireworks look like for you, what does that look like after this free agent period?
So I like the sound of it. We're kind of up against it in terms of how we're going to improve the team, right?
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of draft picks because of some of the trades we've made. That's fine. That's the decision we made. We don't have a ton of young players that we assume are going to get better year over year, right? We've got some, but not as much as other teams have. And we really can't afford to be making too many more trades because, again, we've kind of run out of the draft assets that usually is used for trades, right? So it kind of just leaves you with something we have plenty of, and that is the cap space and signing a few free agents. I think that really is not only our best route, it's our going to be our main route if we're going to improve the team this offseason, which of course we need to do. So I'm in favor of that. free agency is almost always going to be an overpay. That I've come to accept that as part of the risk. And as long as you don't overdo it consistently, you generally should be fine. We watched the Patriots last year add four guys that I thought at least three of them were overpays, and yet they showed up in the Super Bowl, and those four guys were a huge part of it. So I'm in favor of it. We know that free agency doesn't cure all of your ills. It really comes down to the coaching staff adding all the players from all the different pathways and turning them into a team. That really is what it comes down to. But still, being able to have the flexibility, the space to spend the money and bring in some new people, hopefully some good new people, then that's exciting. Now, what does fireworks mean for me? That would mean adding about three or four players. I mean, if I was legit going to take this fireworks thing seriously, right, it would mean adding three or four players who weren't rotational guys. These were guys who were going to be starters. So, and maybe at least, I don't think there's any superstars coming through free agency, but, at least one guy who could at least threaten for Pro Bowl, right? So, that's what it would mean for me. Three or four guys, all of whom would be legit starters, and at least one of whom could in theory threaten for the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, so for what it looks like for me is at least three or four guys. And those three or four guys are going to be on multi-year. I'm not going to say crazy amounts in terms of contracts, but like pretty sizable amounts. Like,
Right,
they're going to be the starter for the next at least 2 to 3 seasons.
right.
Like I'm talking there's probably at least two 4-year deals in there. There's a 3-year deal in there. Maybe a couple high price 2-year deals. And I think overall, you're going to see the team try to add through free agency about 6 to 7 starters overall, whether that be on the offensive or both offensive and defensive side. Probably four, if I had to guess, there's probably going to be four, maybe five if they're lucky on the defense side of the ball, and then probably one or two on offense, mainly probably a receiver, and whether that be a re-sign of Chris Paul at guard. Or a tight end like Isaiah Likely or Kate Otten at tight end. I think those are going to be the positions, at least on offense, that they target. And then at anyone on defense, really, you can justify signing anyone on defense. Um, I also think maybe, I mean, again, rumors, of course, that Kenneth Walker might be available, that Seattle may not re-sign him, that they might allow him to test the market. Uh, that would be an interesting thing. I wouldn't like overpaying for a guy like Kenneth Walker just because the consistency has not really been there throughout his career. He had a great postseason, and he's been great in spots, but I don't know. I mean, if you want to add him to a rotation of guy like or of the quarterback or excuse me, running back room of it would be Walker, it would be Bill Krosky-Merritt, it would be Chris Rodriguez. I feel like that would work, but if you're bringing him in at the contract he's going to fetch, then he's probably going to be the primary guy you get target or attempts and touches overall. You're not going to get him to get a 60-20-20 split with with him, Bill, and Chris Rodriguez. So, um, I mean, it would look like Alex Pierce, signing him, he's going to fetch a lot of money. It would look like uh, Franklin Myers, the defensive lineman out of Denver. It would look like Reek Woolen out of Seattle. It would look like Devin Lloyd. I'm just throwing the names out there that I'm thinking that are available. It would look like Trey Hendrickson. Any combination of those guys uh, that I just mentioned being brought in on 3 to 4 year deals with pretty sizable contract amounts and guarantees.
I agree, and we need it. You and I talked last spring and last summer about the holes on the roster. This was before the disastrous season, right? We talked about how it was going to be real hard to repeat that season of fantasy that we had, and that proved true. We didn't expect it to be this big of a disaster, but the holes are there. We need a ton of starters on defense, and we really could use, objectively speaking, two or three on offense as well. Now, how much of that, that money only spreads so far, and the draft picks only spread so far. But if we're going to have any chance of also keeping our jobs after next year and of us having a good season, we're going to need to do that. You're right about the excitement level, the amount of money that would be spent. It's exciting, and it really does change the look of things when you bring in new people, whether any of the names that you mentioned. It really does change things. So I'm looking forward to it. I feel like that's not unexpected, actually. You and I have talked about we've got the cap space sitting there and we can create more, like legitimately, not just by fake creating cap space that actually borrows from future seasons. We can create legit cap space by cuts if we want to. So, there's no reason we can't go out and be high spenders. And that doesn't mean we have to be stupid. You said that earlier as well. There was a time, going back 10 and 20 years ago when teams would get kind of stupid in free agency and they would go out and try to grab, the top guy at three or four positions and sign them all to 5-year deals. And then, boy, you're stuck, man. If they don't hit, you're kind of screwed. Teams have backed off of that. Thankfully, you are tending to look more at 3 and 4 year deals, so you're not tied in for quite so long. And I do feel like that's the way to go here. And why not? If we if we don't spend the money and we just kind of spread it all out over 20 guys that average, $4 million a pop, we're probably not going to have a very good season and everybody's going to lose their jobs, right? So I think this is not unexpected, and I do expect some level of fireworks. Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple things on what you mentioned there. There are definite ways that that they can create cap space. One would be extending Tunsil. That would bring down his 2026 cap number. Uh, Two, obviously releasing Marshawn Lattimore, potentially releasing Nick Allegretti. We had that conversation. I believe it was the last, or maybe 2 weeks ago at this point. We had that conversation. That alone frees up about 21 million in cap space. So that jumps us up to about 89 million in cap space. Right now we're sitting at 66. So that relieves some cap space. So extending Tunsil, potentially extending a guy like guys like Frankie Louvu and Tyler Biadasz. So I've said multiple times at this point, there's no succession plan for Tyler Biadasz. Okay, I feel like he's kind of on the downside of his career now. I think he's 29, and just with all these injuries, I think they've piled up on him, and I just don't think he's as good as he was in 2024. And I don't even think he's as good as he was when he was in Dallas. Dallas, you could argue he's a top 10 center in the league. I don't think you can argue that now. So there's no succession plan there. And I don't know, and he's in the last year of his deal, but I don't know that they're going to get rid of him. So there's a way to drop his cap number down, which is to be extend him probably on a 2-year extension. Maybe if you want a third void year on there, that's fine. But that could help you. Frankie Louvu, look, he didn't have a great season, but for the team, if you're looking to lock him up anyway, why not do it now at a more favorable rate? Now his agent could say, yeah, we're going to hit free agency next year. We believe in this defense and he's going to ball out, you know. But he's still going to fetch a pretty good number if we try to extend him. I mean, he wasn't all pro in 2024. So, options there to extend guys to also
Excuse
create
me.
cap space, bless you. Um, and just increase that number to give us some more power in free agency. And that's even we by doing all of that, we're creating a lot of more cap space. So we're pushing over 100 at that point. So that even if we do go a little crazy on some of these guys, we're still going to have a sizable amount left, you know, and you got to pay for talent. We are a talent starved team right now. And you've got to pay out the nose to get it because it's not coming in the form of draft picks. I've kind of accepted that at this point. Even if 7 hits turns out to be a superstar, that's one player in one position, and we got 21 other positions we got to worry about. So I'm fine if we overspend a little bit here and there. Um, as long as it's the right moves. I don't want to go out and just get the top guys because they're the top guys. I want to get talented players that are going to work in the system, that are going to work in the locker room, that we're going to look 2, 3 years down the road and be like, man, that was a good signing.
Yeah, I agree. And I, out of those five moves that you mentioned, I would actually do four of them. Matter of fact, I kind of expect four of them. The Tunsil, I don't know why you wouldn't extend him when you traded for him and he had a pretty good season. And he's, to me, until Connerly develops, Tunsil is by far the most talented guy on this offensive line as far as just talent base, right? So I don't know really why you wouldn't extend him. Even if he takes a half step down, he's still more talented than the rest of the guys on this offensive line, right? So I like that. Cut in Lattimore. You and I talked about that months ago that we just figured that was going to happen, and I still think that's going to happen. Cutting Allegretti, you and I talked about that last week. I think that's the right move to make, more than likely. And then extending Frankie Louvu. I would extend Frankie Louvu if I like the number I'm getting. And if I don't like it and he just wants to play this year under, the contract he's got, I'm really okay with that too, quite honestly. So, I'll tolerate that. I think the only one I wouldn't do is extend Biotish, and that's because, you mentioned it, the age, and he just doesn't play as well as he used to. So, and a little bit of a segue into what we were going to talk about tonight. One reason I would feel great, not great, I would feel comfortable letting go of Biotish. It's a good year to pick up a center. There are three or four guys in this year's draft, pretty much up and down the board, depending on how aggressive you want to get about getting a higher talented center. That would work very well at center for future prospects. So, Biotish could play out this year on his contract, and we get somebody in the draft.
Yeah, so I think that's a good segue into the next segment. And we're going to talk about free agents a lot more here over the next coming weeks. Like I said, we got the combine coming up. There's going to be rumors there. We're going to do a preview of the free agents that we want to sign, that we want to retain rather. Uh, and then we're going to probably go shopping on free agency for one episode. So, and that'll probably be right before free agency starts. So, a lot coming up about free agents. Also, probably some more mock drafts. But for now, like you said, there's some opportunities here to grab some offensive linemen, mainly centers, but also maybe a guard as well. If Chris Paul is not the answer, the long-term answer, or if really the Brandon Coleman experiment, it didn't work out at tackle. Seemingly didn't work out at guard last year. He lost his job to Chris Paul. I mean, I'm more than willing to give him another chance at any position, whether it's backup tackle, whether it's starting guard, what have you. I'm ready to give him another chance, but that's me. I'm not the one making the decisions.
Yeah, agreed. And listen, it's the Coleman stuff surprised me. I just assumed he was either going to be dialed in as a starter or a heavily used rotation guy. I just assumed starter didn't work out. So I still have hopes that Coleman can be something in this league. But, obviously the coaching staff didn't feel that way last year.
Yeah, I'm perfectly ready to give him another opportunity, but again, it really just depends on what the coaching staff. I mean, and it's a relatively new staff. I mean, maybe Blau doesn't like him, as much as Kingsbury and Peters does. So it's it'll be interesting to see there. But I really think the rest of the offensive line, starter wise, is okay. I don't know that it's great, but I think it's on the verge of good. You can really solidify that left guard spot. I think if Biotish can return to one, just stay healthy, and then two, return to that top 10 to 12 center play that he was given. Which again, let's be clear, he didn't play bad last season. It just wasn't what he would usually does. Like I said, I think he was a top 10 center when he was at Dallas. Now was he a top three center? No, but I think he was definitely a top 10. And then 24, he was good. He wasn't great. And then last year he was even a little bit worse than he was in 24. So it's just been this kind of decline here. Cosme, look, when he came back, it was a little rough, but I think once he got his feet under him, that right side of the line really improved. And Connolly, he didn't miss a snap, and he really came on strong at the end of last season. Those final 7, 8 games, I think he gave up, I think, one sack. Whereas opposed to the first like 4 games, I think he gave up five. So definite improvement. on the right side of the line there. I think it's a good group. But what would you be looking to add based on this group here?
Yeah, and to be clear, we're basically just doing our due diligence here tonight when we're talking offensive line prospects, because you and I know what everybody in the audience knows. Thankfully, offensive line is the least of our worries. I mean, out of all the positions on the team, offensive line is okay. We could work with what we got, so we understand. But still, we've done prospects on almost every other group now. I think we're just missing a couple of groups, and we're going to finish them all out as well. So it's important to do our homework because you never know when you're sitting there in the draft and it's your turn to pick, and the positions you want to draft at don't have people you like. Okay. And that happens to every team it happens to. So when that's the case, if there's a guy you like at a position you didn't necessarily plan on drafting for, you want to get somebody that you like, right? So you're right. More than likely, we won't be picking off of this left side of the screen, which has all the tackles. Probably won't be getting one of those more than likely. Still, though, there's a nice group there to be had. Most of our work will be done on the right side with offensive guard and offensive centers here. Quite a group on both sides. It's not the best or deepest group ever. Still a very good group, though.
Yeah, so tell me about for example, just say like, you know what, we don't want a top three tackle. Yeah, we don't want Laramie Tunsil. So uh what would be the succession plan there, I suppose?
Let's work out a couple of scenarios at tackle. Okay. So if for some reason the Tunsil deal can't get done, or we're just sitting there picking on the tackle we like right there. I'm going to struggle with his name, but Ian Nature, something like that. I apologize for butchering the name. They're on the right side, over at right tackle, really, not a left tackle even. He's a very interesting guy. That's a great spot in the second round to be looking at if we were to land with the second round pick, which we don't have. So that's an unlikely scenario. But in the event we're looking at it, he's a very, very good pass blocker and working in the run blocking. Okay, so if we're looking to upgrade there, that would be something, especially if in theory we could kick Connerly over to the left side. But again, we're probably not shopping tackles in this draft, more than likely, which is that's a good position to be in, actually.
Yeah, so you mentioned that. Uh, this Tunsil extension, I don't think it's going to be a 4-year extension. I can see it being more of a 2 or 3 year extension, two
Right.
years guaranteed. Maybe you can cut them off after that second year, save some money.
Right.
And at that point, you'd like to think Connolly's developed enough. I don't think they drafted him in the first round to be a right tackle. I think they drafted him to be eventually a left tackle. So, do you see a scenario where that's the case? And, okay, now you got left tackle solidify with Connerly. Now you got a right tackle. Do you want to have someone in the pipeline already?
I would. Now, the Commanders, partly due to this regime and partly due to what the last regime did, aren't in position to do that, right? But now, once you kind of get everything, once you get your job security settled and you figure you're good for 3 or 4 seasons and you've gotten a decent roster put together, then you can start doing exactly what you and I are talking about here, and that is kind of setting up the pipeline. I mean, that is really the best way to do it. Yeah, I know it's hard to do that during the first couple of seasons because you're just hoping to catch traction and keep your jobs, right? But
Hmm.
yeah, ultimately that would be the best way. But man, that's my way to build a team right there. It's more long-term, long-range planning, step by step. You just keep building it and then backfilling it basically. Commanders just aren't in that spot, right? So really focusing here on the right hand side of the screen, the guards and the centers. I tell you, Connor Liu is a guy that I am super high on, and myself and Shane over on the prospect side of things, that Shane Ratliff, we've done a tremendous amount of work there. Connor Liu, I love this guy coming in at center. Shane used a phrase the other week on him. There were times where Connor Liu was the Auburn offense. And that is so rare to say about a center, but he really was playing in one of the two toughest conferences in the country and going up against some of the best defensive lines in the country, loaded with NFL talent. Connor Liu is strong enough to push through all of that, and they just built the running game on him. A matter of fact, built the whole Auburn offense off of running the ball right up the middle, and it was really something to see. He'll hold up in pass coverage too. The one thing you don't get with Connor Lew, you don't get the athleticism. So he's not going to be able to pull and trap and, go out there and zone block and all stuff like that. That's just not his game. If you want a guy who's going to win at the point of attack, plow through, dominate at the center point and be able to create running lanes left and right for your running back, that's the guy right there. So if you're looking for a center, Connor Lew, most mock drafts right now have him sitting really back in the late second to early third round. So even though I've got second round listed for him because that's my opinion of him, we probably could catch him back there late second, early third round if things worked out a certain way.
So if 71, he's sitting there, are you taking him?
Yeah, I would. The only way I wouldn't, because by the time you get down to 71, I hate to call them leftovers, but it's going to be a lot of leftovers. It's not that there's not players to like there at 71, but a lot of the players we would all truly covet would be gone by that point. So being able to plug what I consider a starting center in right away at 71, I would do it in a heartbeat based on what I think else will be sitting there at 71.
Now you said he's not a guy that's going to get out there and move.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I think based on if David Blau is going to, it's rumored. I mean, he's going to pull from everybody, right? He's going to pull from the Ben Johnson scheme, the Kevin O'Connell scheme, the Cliff Kingsbury scheme. But one thing that those offensive lines have in common is they're all athletic offensive linemen, or that's the kind of the the preferred flavor of offensive linemen. So would Connor Lew fit in that type of scheme?
No, and the only way that that would still work in most cases, most coaches don't ask all five guys to pull and trap. You're usually using two or three guys to do that, right? So you kind of still prefer because the danger is if you've got five athletic guys who run around all over the place, you probably don't have good anchor guys, right? So you tend to could get pushed around in that regard. So most coaches like to kind of keep a couple of guys who are good, solid anchor guys, and then you have two or three guys that can pull and trap. That really is the way. So that would be Connor Lew's entrance into our offense would be Connor Lew would be one of the anchor guys, and we just have to get our pull and trap guys from somewhere else.
So just say that this coaching staff is totally enamored with this guy. Could he play? I mean, Biage still has a year left. Could he play guard or at least uh, backup guard center if need be? If because obviously he wouldn't start over Biadasz.
Yeah, he's got the strength to do that, but more than likely, if we were drafting Connor Lew, he'd probably sit for season behind Biotish because he's again not a puller or trapper. Now, again, if they're wanting to run the football up the middle with Connor Lew at guard, that would still work, but you're going to have to count on everybody else, at least three other guys being able to do the pulling and trapping. So, starts to get a little bit complex there.
Who else on this list are you looking at
Yeah, on the
to
right hand
target
side.
potentially?
Keelan Rutledge is a guy, massive guy. If you're looking for a guy out of Georgia Tech, probably get drafted somewhere in the top 100. A guy whose pass blocking is okay, but the run blocking is fantastic. The real point with him is just the attitude. Goodness gracious, you talk about a guy that loves to hit, loves to start fights, loves to finish them, loves to play through the whistle, quote unquote. Just loves to hit, loves the violence. Boy, you talk about a tone setter, somebody's going to come in there and kick some tail. Keelan Rutledge would be the guy. Now, again, you'll have some of the same problems. He won't be, it's not that he can't pull and trap, but he'll tend more toward the idea that he can't pull and trap as well as some guys can. Okay. So, again, if Keelan Rutledge is a guy you've got on your offensive line, you'll be asking other people to do all that pulling and trapping.
Is there anyone on this on either side of the list here that you just be like, nope, I'm not interested in this guy at all? Like even if it's a need, I'm not drafting him.
Let me mention one of the controversial guys here on this list, okay? And that's going to be Blake Miller at right tackle. It's not that I would not want him, it's just that I'm much lower on him than, say, Dane Brugler or our good friend Simon Short or than Todd McShay, okay? And I know why I'm lower on him than the other guys are, okay? He's good at run blocking, and he plays right tackle, and he's a tremendous character and work ethic kind of a guy. I mean, just tremendous. But he plays high, he plays tall. You notice him a head higher than everybody else because of his stance. And his pass blocking to me is bad. I mean, guys can get around him quick. And that's at the college level, and I expect it would be worse at the NFL level. That's my opinion. I'm not saying he can't outgrow that, but therein lies the controversy. So a lot of people still like him. Todd McShay gets on air quite frequently and tells us how many NFL people are telling him that they love him. So that's the controversy right there. But Blake Miller's a guy that I'm just way lower on. I've got him at second, third round. A lot of people have him sitting at first and second round.
That I feel like tackle is one of those things where if he's that polarizing, it's probably for a reason. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I could be wrong about this, but if the negatives, if there's that many people saying that there's negatives there that are highly concerning, but someone's like, oh, well, the potential is there. And I mean, that's fine, but I don't feel like that's first or even second round worthy unless the talent is just undeniable.
Yeah, for me, no, but I understand. People not only see things differently, but they just put priorities on different things, right? So, again, for those of you in the audience interested, go check out the tape. We're probably not drafting tackle anyway. Another guy we might could be interested in if we had a second round pick, which at the moment we don't. I think that's right. What are we missing?
The second, yeah.
We're missing the second round pick. Yeah, I'm studying so many teams. Jennings Dunker sitting there at offensive guard. And again, I know offensive line is not our priority here, but Jennings Dunker from Iowa, typical Iowa offensive lineman, technically sound and very tough and has the size to boot. So you love that. He can pull and trap. And you talk about a character. I don't know what hairstyle he's got now, but you go look up Jennings Dunker and you're getting quite a character right away. So that's a guy that fans would immediately fall in love with if he was on the team. He can pull and trap, no problem, can do all of that very well. Again, I'm not hugely in love with his pass blocking, but it's fine. It holds up, but I'm more willing to tolerate a lack of pass blocking from a guard than I am a tackle. When I need my tackles to pass block, goodness gracious, if they can't do that, I don't know why I even have them starting at my tackle spots. But at guard, he still holds up in pass blocking. It's just he's a much stronger run blocker to me.
I really, even though it's not a priority necessarily, if the theme of the offseason is to protect Jaden, whether that be get a stronger defense, whether that be add weapons, I think adding to the offensive line, uh, even if you do resign Chris Paul, and you still have Brandon Coleman, I think if you trade Addis seven and you still pick up a defensive guy in the first round, I would be more than okay with drafting a guard or a center in the second round. Now, is it a high performing position? No. It's not a very glorious position, but what it is an investment on the offensive line, which directly protects Jaden Daniels. And he's been injured multiple times already in a short career, and we can't keep having that. So if you make an investment in the offensive line, you're making an investment in Jaden. So I don't disagree with the thought that spending a second round pick on a guard or center is the wrong thing. Like I think that's a good decision.
I'm in the same boat. I think it's important. If we were in a slightly different position, I would prioritize it. You've mentioned it though. We all know it's true. We have so many defensive holes plus a couple on offense. I This is one of the few off seasons I'm not looking to pipeline offensive linemen. Goodness gracious. I'm such a big believer in it. But we got so many other holes and we're trying to keep our jobs and win some games next year. So it's kind of tough to do it. But it's amazing how many times you get to your turn to pick and the guys you wanted at the places you need aren't there anymore. And you do end up picking the guy you liked best at a position you don't need. So we have to pay attention to those possibilities. We know we're not going to use the seventh overall pick. There's too many good players sitting there at seven. We know we're not using the seventh overall pick on an offensive lineman. So I haven't even mentioned the top guys at tackle and guard here. There's four guys at tackle and one guy at guard. I haven't even mentioned that we won't because we know we're not in that shopping market. But if we were to trade back off of seven, and all of a sudden we have, say pick 16 and maybe 43, something like that, then we might depending on how the board fell, we might be in the market for an offensive lineman at that point just because of the way the board falls.
And it also depends too. I mean, if we spend heavily in free agency, which we talked
Yes.
about as a very real possibility, and
Yes.
we knock out some of these positions of need pretty heavily, I mean, it's not out of the question. Ideally, I mean, just in general, a general principle, if you can supposedly fix, like you hope everything works out with these trade signings. If you can fill the majority of the holes that are needed in free agency, that just allows you to take best player available, at any selection. Whether it's seven, where it's at 71, whether you trade back and you pick up a second round pick, it allows you to use that for the best player available. So eventually you can create a pipeline, whether that's on the defensive line, whether it's at corner, whether it's an offensive line, wide receiver, what have you. You are allowed to do that then. Now, is that realistic? Probably not. There's probably going to be one or two glaring needs once we get to draft time, even if we do spend big in free agency. But that doesn't mean at that second round or even third round that we couldn't make a selection like this.
You're 1,000% right on both counts. This is the least unlikely scenario, right? That we're shopping for offensive linemen come late first, second, or third round. That's the least likely scenario. But it does happen. Teams find themselves in that particular unenviable position all the time. And you're right. Most teams these days are trying to have at least all the positions covered by the time they get to the draft. And, they may understand well that they've got a completely mediocre, below average guy at some positions, right? At safety or at defensive tackle, but in their minds, they at least have the position somewhat covered. They could get through the season if they had to. They've got everything covered. So teams are trying to do that. I'm sure the Commanders will try to do that same thing. That once you've done that, that does allow you to kind of pivot anywhere you want to in the draft. But that's not always easy to do because that does kind of bring up the dilemma of, well, we didn't really hit our goals in free agency, which was to upgrade some of these positions. We kind of just spread it around and filled up the gaps a little bit, as opposed to really upgrading, which in theory is the better goal for free agency, right? So uh, this is us shopping for offensive linemen is the least likely scenario, but it is a possibility, and we wouldn't be doing our jobs if we didn't cover it tonight. So,
Any other guys that you want to point out? Any final thoughts on the offensive line group? Is it a good group overall? It's look based on the grade, it seems like a pretty deep group. Anything else you want to point out?
so I like the group of tackles. I've heard a lot of people kind of downplay it. There's no true guy at the top this year, honestly, between Fano and Mamagoa. You could probably take your most people like Fano better, but he's not like a couple of the guys that have come out in the drafts the past couple of seasons at offensive tackle where you're like, this guy could be an all pro in the making without, too much imagination. So you don't have that guy kind of sitting there at the top this year. But man, there is a lot of depth right there at tackle. You look at those top four guys, man, those could be some very good starters for many years. And then even after that, what you start to run into is guys that can, with Freeling and with Blake Miller, you have guys that can run block but not pass block particularly well. And but Caleb Tiernan sitting right there in the second round, out of Northwestern, that's a pretty good tackle. He held up very well in the Big Ten against some pretty good edge rushers. So the depth is there, but probably not the star power this year at tackle.
All right, anything else?
No, that's it. We could go on and on a lot of these guys. Demetrius Crownover's a guy out of Texas A&M that I thought was going to be doing sixth and seventh rounds. He started moving up boards. Austin Barber is a guy out of Florida who got very little attention this year. before the draft season started, but he actually played very well in the Senior Bowl, I believe it was. They kind of pushed around the other team who had legit NFL guys on the defensive side, and Barber was a part of the offensive line that was kind of pushing them around a little bit. So, if you're a team, which thankfully we're not, right? If you're a team that needs to add to some holes on your offensive line, this is not a bad draft to do it. I like this group. So anyway, that's it.
All right. Please again make sure that you subscribe to Pro Football Enterprises. Ben has done a lot of film study on these guys, not necessarily all of these guys, but across all positions, across all teams in college football. He does put in the work, he does put in the effort, and he puts together the videos with, himself, Shane Ratliff, Simon Short, Austin Freed, a bunch of guys that I'm probably not naming right now. But he puts in the work, and so does the other guys. So do the other guys too. They do their homework. So if you like the quality content of these prospects and going in depth into top prospects, or even maybe guys that aren't in the first or maybe the second, third round guys, then please subscribe to the channel and set notifications so anytime Ben drops one of these videos, you can get tuned into it. Um, so I mean, there's tons that he's already uploaded. Check the backlog, check the ones that have already been uploaded, and watch to your heart's content.
All right, everybody. That is it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll be back next week with more Commander stuff. Robertson, take us out.
Yeah, we'll see y'all next week. More Commander stuff, more draft stuff, more free agent stuff, whole thing.
Bye, everybody.